you, Dr. Davis, for joining us. We are absolutely excited to have you on our podcast. So we're going to just jump right in because we really want to know how you got into lifestyle medicine and what's the story behind your passion for plant-based nutrition?
So I became interested in lifestyle medicine. So what happened is about 12 years ago, truthfully, actually, in the beginning, I was always worried about the environment. And I learned that consuming less meat and dairy and any animal products basically was better for the environment. But I always wondered, I'm like, what do vegans eat? Like, how do they survive? How do they get their protein? But so then about 12 years ago, there was Forks Over Knives, the movie came out, and they had this thing, take the 28-day challenge. And I was like, okay, so we did it. So the whole family did it. And at the end, I felt great. Around that time, I also started doing more ultra distance athletic things. And I found that I was recovering so much faster from my training. And I was like, wow, I feel great. And then at the end, I saw the movie and I was like, I haven't learned anything. In medical school, unfortunately, you don't do a lot with nutrition. So when I saw the movie and I saw all of the stories of the people that were changing their lives by changing their diets, I was like, there's more to it than just saving the environment. So then I continued to educate myself. I got the plant-based nutrition certificate at Cornell, where I learned so much more. And I love to read. So I was reading a lot of books about it, reading the China study, all kinds of things, which all demonstrated the power of plants. And so then I pursued lifestyle medicine certification, where I learned even more about lifestyle in general. So plant-based nutrition, number one, but also just how a healthy lifestyle can be life-changing. And ever since I learned that, I just felt like I wanted to do more with it. And then now, more recently, I've had more friends that have, had heart disease, have had to have stents. And I just felt like, still the mainstream medicine, it hasn't come to mainstream medicine. And I feel like I could do so much more. So I really became passionate, about really making everybody understand that they can really change their lives by changing their diet and their lifestyle. So.
Yeah, you mentioned I'm sorry, did you have something else to say? Because I was going to ask another question.
Yeah, you can go on. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So so you mentioned medical school. So that's a really interesting topic because a lot of times, and we hear this all the time with people, in our program, I think we've got over 10,000 people in our Facebook group and others like on our Facebook page and everything. But a lot of times people will say, well, my doctor told me to eat this or eat that, or didn't say anything about food. Like let's say I actually have a friend who had a cancer diagnosis, a breast cancer diagnosis, and her doctor basically said, just eat whatever you want, like cake or pizza, whatever you want to eat. Like it just didn't matter. And so people rely on their physicians to give them like nutrition advice. Can you shed a little more light on, and maybe just through your experience in medical school, what is or isn't taught as it relates to like nutrition and health?
So my experience in medical school, I have to say more schools are introducing more detailed nutrition, but what I learned in medical school is mostly biochemistry, the breakdown, protein, fat, glucose, carbohydrates. This is what you need to, what patients need to consume. And even when you calculate, say, when you're doing an ICU doctor, so when I was calculating nutrition for patients, you break it down by that, not really paying attention to the quality of what those things are, the nutrients, the micronutrients, the antioxidants. None of that came into play. So really it was, as long as you're getting protein, and the protein source was always meat, you learn that meat and dairy for calcium and, just those traditional things. So unfortunately that's not, it's not mainstream yet, that's what you learn. Yeah. So I even have a story when I was, in the ICU, just a few years before I became plant-based, we had a patient that was recovering from, a serious illness, and the family was vegan. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is awful. She has to have, protein from meat, and I think back at like, oh my goodness, what I was telling them. But that's what, we learned, that protein only came from certain sources, whereas everything has protein in it. We didn't learn that. So.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's like it could be, I mean, it seems like an easy fix, like just because of what, we've learned post, formal education around the role of, like phytochemicals and antioxidants and fiber, and then just the substances that are in meats, like TMAO and, new 5GC and heme iron and those sorts of things. And it's just, it just, I think it's both, and this is just me getting on my soapbox, so I apologize, but it just seems like it would be like a very simple fix to just add that to the curriculum. Because you think about like eCornell and what they've done, because I actually, that's what kind of inspired me to go to graduate school and get a master's in nutrition, was that certificate. And I think it's a wonderful program. There, that program's only like I think it's like 8 weeks or 10 weeks long. It just seems like, why can't we just take that and just plop it in the curriculum of medical schools, and so much could be resolved with just something like that. But I know there's more bureaucracy around it than
it is, and unfortunately, the data behind it isn't mainstream. Where I feel like there is a lot of money, right, that goes into pharmaceuticals and into the so the data behind that is so much stronger. It's not that it's stronger, I should say it's much more in the forefront. So everything that we do in medicine, I have to say I'm a skeptic, right? So everything that I learned, I want to see the data behind it. And unfortunately, that's just not what's put in front of you. It's not in the textbooks. It's not. So we, as a lifestyle medicine physician and as part of American College of Lifestyle Medicine, that's part of my mission, is to really get that out there and make it be more mainstream. It should be part of the curriculum. It seems like it should be an easy fix, but you're coming from, hundreds of years of this entrenched system where this is how medicine is taught. There is pharmaceuticals and there's surgery, and that's how you manage illness. And it's a process, and it took a while for me. I mean, I know my own process took a while for me to get to the point, so it's going to take time, but it'll happen. It's happening. It's definitely happening.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the work you're doing. That's for sure. So
yeah. Dr. Davis, on your website, Healthy Living with Dr. Jenn, you talk about the 6 pillars that kind of make up lifestyle medicine. And can you just talk about those 6 pillars and the importance to our overall health? I thought that was a really great insight there.
Absolutely. So the first pillar is plant-based nutrition. So it's plant predominant nutrition. So eating predominantly plant-based diet doesn't mean it can be complete exclusion of animal products, but sometimes that people close their ears when they hit that, but it can include a small amount of animal products. The goal is mostly plant forward. Restorative sleep. Sleep is so important. When you're deprived of sleep, that can lead to hypertension. It can lead to weight gain. That's a primary pillar. Stress reduction, again, is a very important part of health. You can get all the other pillars right and still have chronic disease because you have stress that's not managed. Exercise. Every adult should be getting at least 30 minutes of exercise a day. The goal is 115 minutes of moderate exercise per week. They call actually that the new smoking, the sedentary lifestyle, which unfortunately even with the pandemic, I feel like it's elevated even farther from there. Healthy relationships, which again was highlighted in the pandemic, that isolation really is not good for your health, and relationships are a really important part of longevity and health. And then the last is eliminating risky substances. So things like smoking, alcohol, and other, harsh substances. So those are the pillars, and it can be life-changing just by adopting them.
Yes. In terms of exercise, can you share a little more about like your routine? You mentioned something about doing some ultra distance stuff. Maybe elaborate more on that, please.
Yeah, I am a runner. So ultra distance, I love to run just because it's the reason I started running is actually because it was just easy. It just required sneakers, right? I could just go out the door wherever I was and just do it. So run, walk. But then I became more interested in the longer distances. So I like doing ultra races, which is anything greater than a marathon. So greater than 26 miles and above. So up to 100 miles. And that's, my fun. It's a good challenge, mental as well as physical. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Wow. So what does your typical day look like in terms of exercise? Are you just running, or what does your typical day look like?
I do a little bit of everything. So I used to just run. I have to say, I did develop, I have hip dysplasia. So I developed arthritis. So I had a hip replacement. So I started mixing it up a little bit more since then. But still my passion is that's my favorite thing to do every morning. So I do run probably 3 to 5 mornings a week. But then I mix it up. I try to do other things too. I spin, I ride the bicycle. I will do other strength workouts, which is really important also for health, is to do body weight strength. I don't lift weights, but I'll do body weight strength exercises, just anything, to just keep moving. And definitely feel better, when I start the day that way. You feel like you can do anything after you've raised your heart rate, had a little sweat, right? It makes a big difference.
Awesome.
Yeah, Sersie, you want to ask the next question?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll come back around to that one. But here's a question for you, and I'm asking for a friend, because one of the things that I found was in terms of women exercising, because a lot of the women that we serve in our group are women. We have a large amount of Black women as well. One of the things that I hear so often, and that I personally experienced way back in the day, was the hair politics. And a lot of women struggle with really getting active, getting out there and running, getting out there in the heat or whatever, rain, sun, or shine, and it becomes an obstacle to exercise. Can you just talk to that? Like, what do you have, just give some insight into that and how to deal with that, because it becomes an obstacle for women. As crazy as it may sound to some other people, it's a real struggle, I guess, for Black women.
It is. It is an issue, but I feel like you feel so much better when you do it. So number one, no excuses, it has to be done. And there's so many things that you can do to help preserve your hairstyle. There's all these different, sweatbands and things like that help, to absorb sweat and preserve the hairstyle. I personally, I like it to be easy. So I feel like if that's going to be an impedance to my exercising, I want something that's easy and simple to manage. And it's really, it's worthwhile. It's your health. It's really, you're talking about your life, your longevity, your enjoyment, for the long term. And
so for those listening and not seeing you, how would you describe your hair? What is it what specifically would you recommend or that you practice in terms of your hair?
Okay, natural hair. I mean, I do. So that was part of my thing. In the past, I did use relaxers and, for many, many, many years. But when in my transition to plant-based and being more aware of the toxins that we're exposed to, because that's another huge, huge thing for African-American women, for Black women, for women of color, the amount of chemicals that we're exposed to is horrendous, and they have a long-term effect. You think things went, unfortunately, here in the United States, little testing is done on personal care products. Really horrendous things have to happen before there's a change. And even if there is something that happens, it is hard to make a difference. So just because it's on the shelf in your local store does not mean it's safe. And if you are using it on a daily basis, and we use multiple products on a daily basis, you have to consider this having a long-term effect on your health. What you put on your skin is in your bloodstream. So you have to consider that everything that they use can be in your bloodstream in a short period of time. And these things aren't tested. They're not tested like medications. They're not tested. So you really have to be safe. So I really recommend natural, as little products as you can expose yourself to on a daily basis, is the best.
So, braids, sister locks, just kind of a short or just natural,
short hair, yes.
fro kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, she asked me to describe my hair. I'm sorry. Right now I have braids, but normally I have, I actually cut my hair short initially because I wanted to get rid of the relaxer, and I've had, any length from there, from really short to a little bit longer, but natural. Yeah, I got rid of the relaxer, and I try to use as few chemicals as possible. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good information. I hadn't thought about the chemicals and things like relaxers.
Yeah, that was the main thing for me. Yeah, was the chemicals.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because what we put in our mouth is one thing, but also what we put on top of our skin is also another gateway. So I'm glad you highlighted that as well.
So I understand that you enjoy cooking. Can you share a little more about your favorite go-to meals?
Okay. I do love to cook. I do have two teenagers. I have to say, when we transitioned to plant-based initially, my kids were 7 and 9. So that was a little, dicey, but, so I'm always trying to convert things, what they like to something, more healthy, plant-based. So, I mean, we do a lot of like pasta Italian things. So I do make like a lasagna is one of the things that I make using like whole grain noodle. I use like gluten-free, like brown rice noodles or whatever gluten-free, that's least processed as possible. I always try to use whole grain ingredients, because you figure anything where you can add extra nutrients, I try and do that. So I usually use whole grain noodles. I will add red lentils to my red sauce to give a little extra protein and a little more body. And that's really great. And then I'll make like a ricotta using like either almonds, like an almond based, or I use tofu. And then I usually add, so wherever I can add greens, I add them. So I will add spinach or kale or whatever I can as a layer in there. And then, so that's one thing. The other great thing is like pesto is another good thing too, if you like really flavorful things, because you can add any green to pesto and it's good. So I put like kale, I'll put whatever green I have in there and mix it up, in addition to a little basil. What other things we do? I mean, I do a lot of tofu. So you can season that any way you want. So that's a great thing. So, I'll make jerk tofu. I'll make an Asian tofu. I make all kinds of different tofus. We make a lot of, I'll make a lot of like curry kind of dishes. So I'll make like a lentil curry. There's so many options. That was one of the things when I first transitioned. I was like, oh my goodness, what are they? And then now I realized there's like so many things you can do. I use jackfruit a lot. So I can use jackfruit to make like, my son loves pulled pork. So I'll make a jackfruit pulled pork. I made crab cakes the other day with jackfruit and hearts of palm together seasoned. So, and I try to minimize the amount of oil I use. And the other thing is like, instead of using like cream, obviously I don't use cream. So a great substitute for cream would be like cashews. You can mix cashews with water of varying, depending on what consistency you want and whether you want it sweet or whether you want it savory, you just add. So cashews are a great option. I use that in a lot of things to add that extra creaminess. So.
I'm glad. I mean, you mentioned something that you transitioned with your family when they were 7 and 9. We'll pivot a little bit. I know your background is a little bit in pediatrics, but even as a mom who did this yourself, what advice would you give families who are trying to transition with older children? I think when you have like a baby from birth, of course, and everybody's on board, it's like the perfect magic that happens for the plant-based family. But what about if you're starting kids later? What suggestions do you give in actually, bringing that lifestyle into the home, number one, but then number two, what if you have a house that is divided and you have like one spouse that's eating not healthy, the other one's trying to be poor, and then you have the kids in the middle that has exposure to the two different types of foods? What are some tips you feel for families and how they can handle those two situations?
So, I mean, we do have a struggle in my household, even though we all transitioned generally to plant-based. My son, so what I do is at home, we do not cook meat or we don't use animal products. In the beginning, we did. So I would make a variety of different vegetable dishes. So that's how I look at it. I changed how I looked at it. Instead of looking at the traditional like meat, protein, vegetable, meat, vegetable starch, however you look at a typical American meal, I would look at, I'm making a bunch of different sides. So I'd be like, I make a variety of different sides and you can try, and my kids would try all the different things. And then so it seems like a lot of work, but it's not really. When you think about when you're making a vegetable, you just make a few different vegetables, right? And then have everybody try them. So that was one thing. And I didn't make it so rigid. Like I said in the beginning, I did still prepare meat but then gradually over time, we stopped preparing. But I would let the children participate in making the meals, help choose, I did have a little garden, so I would let them help plant, and then they would try the things out of the garden. So that was another great way. As far as so I have to say, when I would go to work, because as an ICU doctor, I would spend 24 hours away from home. So sometimes the unhealthy things would come into the household. So instead of trying to make a big deal out of it, I just try to reinforce the positive. So just instead of making it a fight, because the more that you make it a fight or a conflict, the more they're going to back away from it. So really just offering choices, educating them along the way, which even though it seems like they're not listening, they are absorbing it all. And they educate their friends. I'll listen and I'll hear them tell their friends certain things that they've heard me say. So, I think it's just constantly educating and reinforcing, which is everything in parenthood. It's everything that you do with children is just reinforcing the message and being consistent. And again, not making it a fight or an argument, so.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, because sometimes you could end up blowing up the whole house in hopes of trying to do the good, but in essence, it's like a backlash. So I do like that idea of reinforcing the positive. That's good. Awesome.
Okay, so actually just backtracking a little bit, you mentioned in the pillars the importance of sleep. And it's actually something I personally struggle with. So I was just curious to know, what is your sleep routine like?
So I have to say, sleep, one of the important parts of setting your sleep schedule is first thing in the morning activity. So making sure you're getting outside in that daylight first thing to reset your melatonin. A big thing is being off. We have so many of these blue screens around, so getting off of the blue screens before bedtime. So I try to charge my phone outside of my bedroom. I try, most of the time I do. And that's important. So not seeing that blue screen, because that immediately shuts off your melatonin. So that already messes up your whole circadian rhythm. So putting down the blue screen. I try to have a nighttime routine. So I usually have like a tea before I go to bed. So just like your body knows that it's time to go to bed. So I have tea, I'll do some relaxing reading. I try to read like a novel or something that's not going to get me, upset or whatever. So, and then just, keep the bedroom cool. So I always have a fan that's on at night, and just, it should be dark. Which is kind of hard sometimes with my teenagers, because they like to keep all the lights on in the house, or they stay up later than me. But that's a really important thing, is to have complete darkness, when you go to bed. So when you are, like when I'm reading, I have a small reading light that I use. I don't have like an overhead light. So that's another important thing, because again, as much as you can decrease that light pollution, that will help with your, bedtime routine, your sleep.
Yeah. So I'm going to be a little nosy. What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? So I'm actually reading Where the Crawdads Sing. So that's my.
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay.
I'm also reading a bunch of other books, but I try not to read those before bedtime. I love. I'm reading Jay Shetty's Think Like a Monk. That's another great book.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So not too heavy. Not a lot of like sciencey stuff or.
Not
I'm reading some of that too. I'm always reading multiple books at one time. I'm also reading this. I should put this here. This is The End of Heart Disease.
Yeah.
Great one. Awesome.
Yeah.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome book. So what about time? Because this is where I struggle the most. The routine, I could get all of that down pat, but what is your timeline cutoff? Or I know you work, I don't know what your schedule is at the hospital or what have you, but
yeah, like what time you go to bed and what time you wake up, kind of?
I try to go to bed. I usually go to bed around 10. And I wake up at 5. My internal clock is set for 5 a.m. So I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. So, and that's an important thing too, is to have the same wake time every day. So even if you might not go to bed at your scheduled time, you'll always wake up at the same time. So your body is on that set schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not a fan of naps, right? Or are you?
I mean, short naps are okay. It's like you don't want it to be so long that it's going to interfere with your schedule, but sometimes that little cat nap is all you need, and that makes a difference. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Sersie, do you have any other questions before I ask the last one that I think we had?
No. And so for you, when you work with your patients, are you working in a hospital setting now, or how do you work with your patients to get to incorporate all these lifestyle?
So I actually resigned from my hospital job. So I'm doing per diem for them now because I really wanted to do this full time. So I'm in the process of, well, I have launched my telehealth practice. So I'm doing that full time. So really only helping patients that have either recently diagnosed with a chronic disease or at risk for a chronic disease, or just want to make a change. So that's, those are the patients I'm working with now. And it's all telehealth, Florida and Vermont, where I have my license right now. Hopefully I'll expand.
All right, cool.
Oh,
So one of the things that we advocate is being healthy, you know, like when we're working with predominantly women in our group, being healthy for their divine purpose. What advice would you give a woman who is struggling to take charge of her health?
I think a lot of times we feel like it's all or nothing. You know, making a change, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You know, take those few steps, take one step at a time, and just give yourself grace, know that you may not, you don't have to be perfect. It's not perfect. It's a lifestyle that you want to adopt for the long term. So whatever that first step is, take it and embrace it. And then I would say just go for it and give yourself grace and give yourself the ability to make mistakes. It's fine. And it's not really a mistake. I feel like it's all a learning process. So whatever it is, you're going to learn from it and take it as a lesson.
Yeah.
Awesome, Dr. Jenn. Okay, so it was a pleasure talking with you. So where can people find you if they want to know more about what you do and the services you offer? Where can everyone find you?
It's Healthy Living with Dr. Jenn with 2 N's is my website, healthylivingwithdrjen.com. It's also my Instagram handle and my Facebook business page as well. So.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking your time to come with us on this podcast, and we look forward to engaging with you again.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
Awesome.
And you are doing amazing work. I'm so impressed. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.